Good afternoon, Dr. Cross. A few quick questions for you. You mentioned on direct testimony, direct examination, that Cave of the Breezes, uh, there were some warning signs to this landslide.
Right.
But in this case, Cave of the Breezes performed a survey.
Yes, they did. About maybe a year or more before this happened.
And this survey didn't show an increased risk of landslide.
Well, yes, but that was a year or even more before the landslide.
And Doctor, the day of the landslide, the USGS did not put out a landslide warning, did they?
No, they didn't.
And the National Atmospheric Association did not put out a increased risk of landslide warning either, did they?
Well, no, it's my understanding that NOAA's more concerned with weather than landslides, but...
But as a weather agency, they can make a determination whether an increased risk of rain can cause an increased risk of landslide. Isn't that right?
Well, they could, but in my review of the record, they also said that the rainfall in the months preceding this landslide was excessive.
But just to answer my question, there was no professional warnings given that day by either meteorological associations or geological associations.
No, there were no national reports, but you would think that Cave of the Breezes would be in a better position to know whether a landslide was imminent, since the owners are there every day.
And Doctor, there was no national and there was no local warnings given about landslide. Isn't that right?
No, aside from the warning signs that were there were no official warnings by any agency that I saw.
Now, Doctor, I want to talk about the actions Cave of Breezes took that day.
Okay.
You were able to review the deposition of Bobby Daly, is correct?
Yep.
And the deposition of Max Petunia.
Yes.
And so, Cave of Breezes did give a warning that day.
Could you be more specific about the warning you're talking about?
Sure. Cave of Breezes did give safety instructions that day.
Yes, because that's what they're supposed to do as a cave touring company.
And that safety instruction was to stick together.
One of the things mentioned was to stay together, yep.
And that instruction of stick together on the third day, that instruction of sticking together was followed by the team.
As far as I know, yes.
And when that was followed by the team on the third day, that's what allowed them to be able to all get out of the cave. Isn't that right?
Objection, speculation?
Okay, Counselor?
Your Honor, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, this witness will testify that, yes, when all the team together, they were, Howard Sense robot was able to, the robot was able to get them out one by one that day. Because they were together, that's what made this evacuation possible.
Why is that not speculation?
That is not speculation because this witness will be able to testify that this is a advanced cave system. It has many entrances or exits, and because of her personal experience with this cave system, by sticking together, it allowed easier exits.
Counselor, I hear you.
Your Honor, this witness does not have personal knowledge whether or not the staying together caused the robot to be able to work. So I believe it's speculation.
Well, it's an expert, so even if it was a speculative question, you can still ask a hypothetical. Whether it fits the full realm of a hypothetical is iffy, but nevertheless, because it's an expert, I'll allow her to testify to it. Overruled.
And Doctor, you know that this cave system is particularly advanced.
Yes, it is pretty advanced.
So you know the importance of the safety instructions of sticking together to this cave system. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah, that is very important. And among other things, if you're going to go into the more dangerous parts of the cave, you need to be a more experienced caver and have competent tour guides.
And this was a cave system that you yourself got lost in.
Yes, because we were also left by an incompetent tour guide.
But you did not follow the most, you didn't follow the most basic instructions to sticking together.
I stuck together with my filming crew, and we were able to get out on our own with no help of Cave of the Breezes.
Now, Doctor, you mentioned on direct examination that Cave of the Breezes needed to have more emergency supplies in place.
They should have just had emergency supplies, period. They didn't have any, which is my main issue with it.
Okay, Doctor, so you mentioned that they needed to at least have the emergency pack, isn't that right?
Well, they at least needed to have the emergency pack and some food and water just in case there was a cave-in like this, to make sure people wouldn't starve in a cave.
And Doctor, are you aware how long it took to remove the complete dirt from this cave? How long it took to make the entrance open again?
Yes, I learned that total cleanup took about 37 days. Whether or not that it would have taken 37 days to get them all out is debatable.
But Doctor, Your Honor, at this time we would like to read stipulation 6 to the jury.
Okay.
Stipulation 6, it took a total of 37 days to reopen the main point of egress and ingress into the Cave of Breezes. So, Doctor, in this event of taking 37 days, it wouldn't have made a material difference if Cindy Cooney had her back.
Well, my opinion is that if they had emergency supplies in the cave, right, they wouldn't have been in such a panic realizing that the team had absolutely no supplies. So the fact that, well, not the fact. So if they did have supplies, there wouldn't have been such a panic and a race against time. That is the point of what I'm saying.
But Doctor, just to clarify my question, that the emergency supplies in that pack were only for 3 days. That's correct.
Well, if we're talking about just Cindy Cooney's pack, then yes, but my opinion is that they should have also had food and water inside the cave separate from the tour guide's emergency pack.
And Doctor, in your expert report, Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with their deposition, approaching with what's been remarked as page 42. Actually, permission to approach with page 42 and 44. Doctor, I'm handing you 2 pages of your deposition on Cave of Breezes preparedness regarding a cave-in.
You mean my expert report?
Yes, Doctor, your expert report.
Okay, because it's my understanding that a deposition is something else.
Doctor, in your expert report, you make no mention of a particular timetable for the amount of emergency supplies that's required for a cave-in.
No, I don't. But my opinion today is that it's important to just have those supplies so there isn't such a race against time. I'm not saying they needed 37 days of supplies. I'm saying they needed more supplies to buy them some time so they could actually plan a proper rescue mission.
And Doctor, you point to no professional standards for this requirement.
There are no written professional standards to that effect, no.
You have permission to approach and retrieve.
You may.
Now, Doctor, I want to talk to you about decisions Max Petunia made that day. You were able to review Max Petunia's deposition.
Yes, I did look at that.
And after review of that deposition, you know that Max Petunia knew that there was a cave-in at Cave of the Breezes before?
Yes, it was sort of common knowledge around Steelton that had happened.
And you were able to review that Max Petunia knew that it was raining extensively on April 29th.
Yes.
And you were able to see that the waiver form for Cave of Breezes?
Yes, I did take a look at it.
And you were able to see that Max Petunia did acknowledge that he read this waiver form?
Well, from my review, he doesn't remember whether he signed it or his mother signed it, but either way, it was signed by someone.
Right, and you're familiar with this form that specifically states that Max Petunia would waive his rights in the event of emergency rescue?
Yes, I did look at that form, and that is what is contained in the waiver. But, I mean, that doesn't mean that Cave of the Breezes couldn't have done more.
But just to my question, you're aware that that's what this form says and that's what Max Petunia signed, correct?
Yeah, that's what he signed.
And in your review of Max Petunia's deposition, you were able to see that he heard the emergency warning of Cindy Cooney that day?
Yes, he did understand those warnings, and those are the ones given.
Just to clarify, Max knew that it was raining that day extensively.
Mm-hmm.
Max had signed the waiver.
Or his parent, it's unclear.
Right. And Max heard the warning,
Yes.
and Max still went into that cave.
Yes, because Cave of the Breezes didn't shut down.
All right, redirect.
You were asked.
Virginia, Colorado. Okay. PhD, University of Colorado.
Good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Dornberg. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Dr. Kerry Dornberg.
And Dr. Dornberg, what do you do for work?
I am a geologist.
And how did you become a doctor?
Well, I have a PhD from
And
the
what was
University
that?
of Colorado.
And what was that process like?
Well, in order to join a PhD program, you first have to go to an undergrad, just like anyone else, where I went to Steelton University. After that, you have to have a master's, and that's just a matter of going to school for another 2 years. I studied geology at the University of West Virginia, and then I applied for and was accepted into the PhD program at the University of Colorado.
And as a result, what was the end result of your PhD program?
Well, so with any PhD program, one of the things you have to do is make a contribution to your field of work. Most people call that a dissertation. And so I did that.
And were you successful in your dissertation?
Yes, I was able to defend my dissertation on my first try.
Now, Doctor, how did you get involved with today's case?
I was asked by yourself and your partner over there to take a look at the circumstances surrounding a landslide that occurred on April 30th of 2017 at the location of the Cave of the Breezes.
And what materials did you review in this case?
I I reviewed quite a few materials. I reviewed a few depositions, mostly of the people who've already testified here today. I also took a look at some empirical evidence of snowfall and rainfall, as well as reviewing the expert report of Dr. Cross.
And what did you review enough information to come to a professional opinion?
Yes, I did.
And now, Doctor, I want to talk about landslides in general. What are the causes of a landslide?
Well, there are any number of causes of a landslide. And so really itemizing them would take quite some time.
So, Doctor, there's not just one cause of a landslide?
I'm sorry?
Doctor, what effect does water have on a landslide?
Well, I mean, water can ultimately loosen the soil, and when you decrease the density of soil by adding fluid to it, that of course can contribute to a landslide.
And Doctor, is water always the cause of a landslide?
Well, no, there are any number of causes of landslide. Water is just a potential cause of a landslide.
And Doctor, is there only one type of landslide?
No.
How many types of in your review of the record for this landslide, was this a normal landslide?
No, it was not.
What type of landslide was this, the landslide at Cape Breezes?
The scientific categorization of this particular type of landslide is what's called a debris avalanche.
And Doctor, what makes a debris avalanche different than other types of landslides?
Well, a debris avalanche is categorized by its magnitude and its rapid onset.
And is a debris, are debris avalanches predictable?
Well, no. What I meant by magnitude and rapid onset is that a debris avalanche will be larger than a typical landslide. But the other part of it is the rapid onset, which is basically that it's unpredictable. It is impossible to know when a debris avalanche will occur because it essentially is a complete instability of a given slope and the rapid rush of all of that slope downwards towards wherever termination point it reaches. Because of the nature of it, any of the typical signals that would lead one to believe that a place is prone to landslide could show up negative, and you'd still have a debris avalanche.
Now, Doctor, you mentioned size and magnitude. In regards to this landslide, were you able to make a determination on the size and the magnitude of this one?
Well, the magnitude of this landslide was that it was much larger than one would expect from that particular hill.
Now, Doctor, I want to talk about the actions of Cave of Breezes that day. In your review of the materials, were you able to come to an opinion on the steps Cave of Breezes took before the landslide?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Did, in your review of materials, were you able to come across any surveys that Cave of Breezes?
Oh, yes. So, my review of the deposition of Bobby Daly, who is the owner of Cave of the Breezes, you're Bobby Daly?
Yeah.
Yeah. She conducted a survey of the Cave of the Breezes site in 2016.
And what was the result of that survey?
Based on my review of the record, the result of that survey was that there was no indicator of there being a potential landslide in the near future.
And Doctor, was there any other professional warnings given about this landslide?
My understanding is that that survey was the only one performed prior to the landslide.
And Doctor, in your review of the record, were you able to come across any official agencies' warnings about a potential for a landslide in Steelton?
As far as I know, no government agency ever issued a landslide warning for the Cave of the Breezes site.
And Doctor, now I want to talk about the safety warning that Cave of Breezes gave that day. Were you able to review, in your review of materials, were you able to come to an opinion regarding the safety warnings of Cave of Breezes?
Objection, Your Honor. This expert has no expertise in safety.
All right, I hear you.
Your Honor, assuming we're outside of the presence of the jury, if allowed to testify, this witness will say that they do have a background in cave exploration as a Rochester spelunker, and that this background allows them to speak on the safety requirements of cave touring.
Have they testified to that yet?
No, this witness has not testified to that qualification
All right,
yet.
so the objection sustained until such evidence comes out, and then you may renew your objection if you feel it's insufficient.
Doctor, aside from a scientific background with caves, do you have any other professional background with cave exploration?
Yes, I'm a member of the Rochester Spelunking Club.
And as a member of that club, what type of knowledge base have you gained as a member of that club?
Well, it's both an enthusiast and a sort of policy-driven club. So from the enthusiast side, we naturally will set up events for us to allow us to explore interesting caves around the country. The other part of it is that we certainly support efforts to ensure the preservation and safety of caves within the country.
And now going back to first question, were you able to review the safety warnings that Cave of Breezes gave in this case?
Yes, I have.
And what were those warnings?
Based on my review of the record, Cindy Cooney, who was the tour guide for Cave of the Breezes expeditions on April 30th, 2017, gave a safety briefing in which she said, in the event of a landslide, that anyone inside the cave should stay in place and stay together.
And Doctor, was this warning sufficient?
Well, considering that the Cave of the Breezes has only is a relatively simple cave at the front of it. It gets much more complicated towards the back, but it's not. I don't have anything in the record that indicates they would have gone back there. That kind of warning would have been sufficient for that kind of expedition.
And now, Doctor, I want to talk to you about decisions Max Petunia made that day. As a review of the materials, were you able to review Max Petunia's deposition?
I have.
And as a result of your review of the materials, were you able to, in reviewing the materials, what if anything did you learn about Max Petunia in regards to the warnings he received that day?
Well, he heard them, and to the best of my knowledge and my review of the record, he followed them.
And Doctor, in your review of the record, were you able to see Cave of Breezes policies in place in the event for cave exploration?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Did you come across any? Were you able to review the waiver form in this case for Cave of Breezes?
Oh, yes, it was.
And now, Doctor, further, in reviewing that waiver, were you, in Max Petunia's deposition, were you able to, in your review of both those materials, did you see that Max Petunia had seen that waiver?
Based on my review of the deposition of Max Petunia, the plaintiff did in fact read and appreciate the
Move
waiver.
to strike, Your Honor, speculation.
Okay, I'll hear you.
Your Honor, assuming we're outside the presence of the jury, if allowed to testify, this witness will merely state that in reviewing Max Petunia's deposition, that Max Petunia did indeed see and sign this waiver. That is the extent of this witness's testimony regarding those materials.
Your Honor, the witness just testified that Max Petunia read and appreciated the waiver. He cannot know whether a 17-year-old could appreciate the waiver and what the waiver meant. That would be speculation, getting into line with what Max Petunia understood the waiver to be.
Okay, well, so I'm assuming then you're moving to strike that testimony?
Yes, Your Honor.
And it sounds like the defense does not intend on introducing that testimony.
That's
Okay, so that part of the answer is then therefore stricken.
in Doctor. In your review of the materials, were you able to come to an opinion of a reasonable degree? Were you able to come to professional opinion based on your knowledge, training, and experience with a degree of reasonable scientific certainty?
As to what?
As to the foreseeability of this landslide.
Yes, I have.
And what was that opinion?
My opinion is that the debris avalanche that occurred on April 30th, 2017 would not have been foreseeable. That at best, the signals that the plaintiff references may have resulted in a much smaller landslide that would not have blocked the entrance. But the debris avalanche that occurred here never would have been predicted by the defendant.
And Doctor, in your review of the materials, in your review of the record, were you able to come to an opinion with based on your knowledge, training, and experience, with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty in regards to the reasonable actions Cave of Breezes took that day?
Yes, I have formed an opinion to that.
And what was that opinion?
Well, considering that a debris avalanche did occur, the actions of the defendant to get the individuals inside the cave
The plaintiff is asking, there is a difference between a horse and a unicorn. In this case, the plaintiff is asking for a unicorn. The plaintiff is asking for the defendant to be National Guard, to be firemen, to be a bulldozing crew, but that's not what defendant. That's not what Cave of Breezes is. Cave of Breezes is a cave exploration company. Cave of Breezes, in every decision it made, deferred to the person who was most qualified. Selected the best person to make the most comprehensive judgment. You've heard testimony today, and plaintiff's case is focused a lot on that Cave of Breezes should have known. We've heard some conflicting testimony today that this fault lies on Bobby Daly. Bobby Daly, who is just a business owner. But plaintiff wants you to believe that Bobby Daly, as just a business owner, should have known that downed trees and some rain caused landslides. Plaintiff wants you to believe that Max Petunia's judgment of an increased rain means there's an increased risk of landslide. But that's not who we need to believe here. Because the experts were quite clear
It was Bobby Daly who did the survey, and the survey showed there was not an increased risk of a landslide. Bobby Daly followed the requirement asked for by Dr. Chris Cross of an annual survey, and that survey showed no increased risk of a landslide. And the United States Geological Service did not put out a landslide warning that day. The agencies whose job it is to determine the risks of a landslide did not find that there was a risk of a landslide in Cave of Breezes that day. And also, you heard the unique nature of this landslide from Dr. Dornberg, that this is something known as a debris avalanche. And those two factors put forward by plaintiff of downed trees and increased rain do not apply to a debris avalanche. That the speed and the size of a debris avalanche is unmatched to that of a normal landslide. It is not predictable. We asked you to remember two things today: that Cave of Breezes decisions saved lives, and two, that Max Petunia assumed the risks. Turning first to the decisions made by Cave of Breezes the days leading up to April 30th and the days following April 30th. You heard that Cave of Breezes owner Bobby Daly performed that annual survey, did not show an increased risk of a landslide. And you heard that Cave of Breezes developed an emergency plan in place that in the event of an emergency to stick together. And you heard the importance of that warning. And it was that warning that saved lives that day. You heard from two experts, Dr. Dornberg, who told you that that type of warning is the industry standard. Dr. Dornberg, aside from being a doctor in geology, is a cave explorer himself. And he told you that that warning was the correct warning to give. And you heard from Dr. Cross that Cave of Breezes is a unique cave system, and it can be extremely confusing. He himself, or it was herself that was lost in Cave of Breezes, and she knows the importance of that request to stick together. That when this cave-in happened, when this landslide happened, keeping the hockey team together saved lives. And you've heard some testimony today that Cave of Breezes did not have sufficient number of supplies in the cave-in. You heard from Dr. Cross that Cave of Breezes needed more supplies, but you never heard a number from Dr. Cross. You never heard an industry standard from Dr. Cross. All you heard from Dr. Cross was that Cindy should have brought a pack. Well, if Cindy had her pack, the team would not have enough supplies for 37 days. That this debris avalanche that covered 10 square kilometers, that took 37 days to clear out, that pack would not have been sufficient. And that leads me to my last point, that Max Petunia assumed the risk. You heard testimony from Max Petunia and from Bobby Daly that Cave of Breezes had a waiver form in order to explore the cave. And you heard from Max that he at the very least saw this waiver form, and his mom signed this waiver form for him. And this waiver form makes clear that Max Petunia waives Cave of Breezes' liability in the event of emergency rescue. That Max, before he went on this trip, signed this form and gave him to the coach. And you also heard from Max Petunia that he knew that there was a cave in a Cave of Breezes 50 years ago. And he knew that there was a substantial amount of rain on the days of April 29th and April 30th. Max, knowing all this information, didn't leave. But Max, and then further the day of the trip, Max heard the safety warning performed by Cindy Cooney. And Max didn't exit the cave. No, Max stayed in the cave. Max knew the risks, and Max accepted those risks. And because Max accepted the risks, and because Cave of Breezes acted reasonably, we ask that you find the defendant not liable.
Rebuttal?